have these guys, you just have double, for every table you can add 2 more people, right?
Right. I see it now.
And I just used the T-chart like Rhonda and found the relationship between the numbers. So if you had 1 to get 4, you multiply it by 2 and add 2. To get 6, you multiply 2 by 2 and add 2.
Oh, okay.
That's
cool.
how I figured that out.
That's very cool. Okay.
So now we have to go backwards, and I think that thinking about this as an equation is going to help us. So let's plug in some numbers. So help figure out how many tables we would need for 32 people who already said they were coming, and then for 100 people who could possibly come. So let's plug in the values that we know into T2 plus 2 equals P. So somebody could use that function, that equation, to plug in 32. Where does that 32 go? Okay, so someone wrote T2 plus 2 equals 32. Okay.
That looks good.
And that kind of, does that remind you of something that we've already done in our work? Like what else that we've done might help us figure out this problem?
The bags and cubes?
The bags and cubes. So if we set this up as a bags and cubes problem, could we figure out the number of tables? And I know we don't have bags and cubes right here, but if you think about it that way. And Catherine, I know you weren't here before, but our students have already done algebraic equations using a scale, using a balance model. So they've had experience with that already.
Yeah, I actually watched those earlier videos, so I saw
awesome.
what they have been working on.
Very cool. Okay, so someone wrote T equals 15. And they also worked out the problem using sort of that balance model.
Balancing, yeah.
Yeah. So, can you guys, I'm not sure who wrote down, who did the work there. It might have been more than one person. Can you explain how you did that? Walk us through your thinking.
I was thinking of it as bags and cubes, that the T2 would be bags if I was visualizing it, and the 2 and 32 would be cubes. And so I subtracted 2 from each side and ended up with T2 equals 30.
Okay.
And then we're trying to find out how many tables, so we divide each side then by 2 to get T for table, so tables then is 15 tables.
Okay. So if we plug 15 back in to our original function, we should get 32 tables. Or not 32 tables, 32 people for that. So does anybody have questions or don't agree, or, are we all in agreement about this?
It looks good.
All right, I see a smiley face. Awesome. All right, now comes the big challenge. How can we figure out for 100 people who could possibly come?
Can I put this on?
Okay, so we have T equals 49. So again, walking us through that equation, it looks very similar to the one we just did. So are we all in agreement about 49? It being 49 tables? Can raise your hand or put a check if you agree. All right. And Doug, let me know if you're having technical difficulties, or some people just learn by listening. But if you can put a check mark if you agree, that would be great. And I think we're pretty much there. Okay. Awesome. All right. So now that we got our answers, let's think about how did the visuals help you solve the problems? Or did they help you solve the problems?
Well, I would say that the visual that we have up right now with the 5 tables had to be explained to me a couple times, but that visual really did help me to see why the equation should be T2 plus 2 equals P.
I would agree. In the past, when I would see a word problem like this, I'd, start to sweat just because, what do I do now? But when you have the ability to draw pictures or a T-chart, it really helps the student to say, let me just find the relationship.
And I think that also, How do you see that this is going to help your student or the children that you're working with? How would you apply something like this if they get a homework problem that is just this big old word problem? How do you feel like visuals would help your work with them?
It gives them go ahead.
Go ahead, Karina.
It gives them another way to look at it so that they don't. I think a lot of times, just in math with my own kids, they panic. So then once they panic, they just quit and they don't even know what to do. But if they know, I can draw a picture, I can do a T-chart, they can start that way, and it helps them to kind of relax and get into the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think I basically agree with Karina. It gives me another way of looking at things to help them through a rough spot that they might be encountering.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you said, Karina, about it being something that gets you away from anxiety, because a lot of times words, right? I think that's a great point. Is that this gives us the opportunity to think differently and be okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Word problems were always my least favorite problems, and I can remember being in school and just, like you say, panicking and just getting so frustrated because I didn't even know where to begin. So the visuals really do help.
And I think also, I guess a question I have for you is, when does the visual become limiting to us? Could we have really done a visual for 100 people? Would that be practical for us?
No, hopefully you can find a pattern. You should be able to find a pattern way before that, I would hope.
Mm-hmm. Because I think that the visual can only take us so far, like you're saying. Like, it's a tool for the pattern that we're working towards.
I think that's why I actually did not want to move on to the screen, because I couldn't see where figuring out the 100 people part of the problem would be able to be worked through on this page. So instead, I just felt like it was easier to work on paper instead of trying to work here.
Mm-hmm. I see, yeah. I think that the interesting thing about that is that it's also interesting to think about the online environment. Because as a teacher, you can walk around, or if you're helping a student with their homework, you're right there with them. And it's just an interesting challenge, because my thinking was there's a value in letting, I think somebody else is moving our images right now. So I'm going to click that off. But I think that it's very valuable to work on your own paper. It's just in the online environment, it's harder to manage. Okay.
I think I can see where it might have been frustrating for you, Jen, because most of us chose to work on our paper, but you weren't able to see what we were doing. And I can understand where that might have been a little frustrating, because you really can't help us when we're here scribbling away on a piece of paper.
Frustrating is a very strong word, but it's challenging, definitely. I'm getting used to this online environment as well. I guess I have a question for you guys. Let me hold that question. Can we think of one thing that we want to take back to the main room about our work together? One thing that you